My husband told me I was nothing. He was smiling. Not the kind of smile you give someone you once loved. The kind you give a problem that has finally been solved. I was standing in the kitchen of the house I had spent 6 years making into a home. The house where I had painted every wall, chosen every tile, stayed up past midnight assembling furniture because he said he was too tired. And he was leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed, watching me like I was a stranger who had overstayed her welcome. I filed yesterday, he said. My attorney will reach out to yours. I looked at him. I don't have an attorney. He laughed. It was a short, quiet laugh, the kind that doesn't need an audience. I know. His name was Derek. We had been married for 7 years. I was 31 years old, and until that morning, I had believed that the worst thing he had ever done to me was forget our anniversary twice. I was wrong. He had been planning this for much longer than I knew. What Derek did not know, what he had never once considered, was that for the last 4 years, while he came home late smelling like someone else's perfume, and I said nothing, I had been watching. Not out of suspicion at first. Out of habit. I had spent 5 years before our marriage, working as a junior financial analyst at a regional accounting firm. I left when Derek asked me to. He said it would be better for our family. We were going to start one, he said. We never did, but I left the job anyway, and I spent the years after that doing what wives in his social circle did. Organizing, entertaining, managing the household accounts, attending charity dinners and smiling. But old habits do not die. They wait. The morning he told me he had filed, I did not cry. I did not beg. I walked to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed we had shared for 7 years, and I opened the drawer of my nightstand. Inside was a small black notebook, the third one I had filled. The first 2 were already somewhere safe, along with a hard drive and a folder of printed documents that I had been quietly assembling for the better part of 2 years. I had not been planning a divorce. I had simply been paying attention. Derek's attorney contacted me 4 days later. Her name was Sandra Voss, sharp, efficient, the kind of lawyer whose hourly rate is printed in a font slightly larger than everything else on her website. She called my cell phone directly and explained, in language just professional enough to be insulting, that Derek was prepared to offer a settlement. I would receive a single lump sum, the car registered in my name, and 60 days to vacate the marital home. He's being generous, she said, given the circumstances. What circumstances? I asked. There was a brief pause. You haven't been employed in 6 years. You have no income, no professional standing, and no independent financial history. Derek's position is that a contested proceeding would be costly. For you specifically. I thanked her for her time and ended the call. That evening, I drove to a copy shop 3 towns over and spent 2 hours at a self-service machine, scanning, organizing, and uploading. When I was done, I had a complete digital file stored across 2 encrypted cloud accounts. Then I drove home, made dinner for 1, and went to bed early. I had already called a number I'd memorized 6 weeks prior. Not a divorce attorney. A different kind of office entirely. Derek did not expect me to show up at the courthouse representing myself. I could tell by the way he straightened in his seat when he saw me walk through the door alone. No briefcase-carrying associate. No paralegal with a rolling cart of files. Just me, and a navy blazer I had bought the previous Tuesday, carrying a single manila folder and a yellow legal pad. Sandra Voss was seated beside him. She looked at me with an expression that was professionally neutral but carried something beneath it. The faint flicker of someone recalibrating. Derek leaned over and whispered something to her. She whispered back. He looked at me again, and this time, the recalibration was gone. In its place was amusement. The judge entered. The Honorable Patricia Chen. I had read every publicly available ruling she had issued in the past 3 years. I knew how she thought. Ms. Calloway, Judge Chen said, looking at me over her reading glasses. You're self-represented? Yes, Your Honor. Derek's attorney stood. Your Honor, I'd like to note for the record that opposing party has no legal training and no counsel. We would request the court consider whether. I'm aware of what pro se representation means, Ms. Voss, Judge Chen said, without looking up from her papers. Please sit down. Sandra Voss sat. Derek was still smiling. His girlfriend, a woman named Courtney who worked in his office and had been at 3 of the last 4 charity dinners I had attended, as his wife, was seated in the gallery behind him. She was wearing a dress that still had the fold lines from the packaging. I set my legal pad on the table. I uncapped my pen. I did not look at either of them. The first 90 minutes were procedural. Derek's team moved through their presentation smoothly. They were good. And they had clearly prepared for a version of this proceeding where I either folded immediately or embarrassed myself trying to argue. The settlement offer was presented as reasonable. My financial dependency was noted at length. My lack of professional income was noted again. Sandra Voss used the phrase realistic expectations 4 times. When it was my turn, I stood up. "Your Honor," I said, "I'd like to submit an exhibit." I walked to the clerk and handed over a tabbed document, 41 pages organized chronologically, with a cover sheet and a table of contents. Behind me, I heard Derek shift in his seat. The exhibit contained 3 years of financial records I had reconstructed from household accounts, tax returns I had access to as the joint filer, and wire transfer summaries I had cross-referenced against a pattern I first noticed when I was reconciling our joint savings account in the spring, 2 years prior. Derek's company, a mid-sized commercial real estate firm he had founded with a college friend, had been running revenue through 2 LLCs that did not appear on any of our joint filings. I was not a forensic accountant, but I had been a financial analyst for 5 years, and I had had a very long time to look carefully. "This exhibit documents a series of transactions," I said, "totaling approximately $430,000 over 31 months. Moves through entities not disclosed in the marital asset inventory provided by opposing counsel." The room was quiet. Judge Chen looked down at the document. Then she looked at Sandra Voss. Sandra Voss was looking at Derek. Derek was looking at the table. "Ms. Voss," Judge Chen said, "were these entities disclosed in your client's financial affidavit?" The pause that followed was the longest 11 seconds of my life. "Your Honor, we would need time to review." "I'll take that as a no." Judge Chen set down the exhibit and folded her hands. "We'll take a recess." During the recess, I sat alone on a bench in the hallway outside the courtroom and ate half a granola bar I had packed in my blazer pocket. My hands were steady. I was a little surprised by that. A man I did not recognize stopped in front of me. He was in his mid-40s, wearing a gray suit that was not from a department store. "Ms. Calloway," he said. He showed me a credential. "I'm with the Financial Crimes Enforcement Division. We've been monitoring a related matter. The documentation you submitted this morning. We've been building a parallel file. We'd like to speak with you after proceedings today." I looked at him for a moment. "I submitted a copy to your office 6 weeks ago," I said. He paused. Then, very slightly, he nodded. "We know. I just wanted you to know that we're here." He walked back down the hallway. I finished my granola bar. When we returned to the courtroom, Sandra Voss requested a continuance. Judge Chen denied it. What happened in the next 40 minutes was not dramatic in the way courtrooms are dramatic on television. There were no outbursts. No one slammed a fist on a table. Derek sat very still and said very little, which was, in its own way, the most I had ever seen him communicate. Sandra Voss was skilled enough to manage the situation without fully collapsing. She pivoted. She requested time to amend the asset disclosure. She spoke carefully. But the document was in the record. The numbers were in the record. And Judge Chen had read every page during the recess, which I knew because I had included a 2-page executive summary at the front specifically for that purpose. The settlement offer Derek had presented that morning, the lump sum, the car, the 60 days to leave, was withdrawn. The judge ordered a full forensic audit of Derek's company financials, suspended the asset transfer provisions of the divorce filing pending the audit, and flagged the proceeding for coordination with federal oversight. Before we were dismissed, Judge Chen looked at me over her reading glasses one more time. "Ms. Calloway," she said, "do you have legal training?" "No, Your Honor," I said. "I was a financial analyst." She held my gaze for a moment. Then she said, "You should consider law school," and closed her folder. I will not tell you the outcome felt like winning. Not at first. I walked out of that courthouse into a gray November afternoon and sat in my car for a long time without starting the engine. 7 years is a long time. Regardless of what someone does to you, 7 years does not dissolve in a single morning. What I felt, sitting there, was something closer to exhale. Like I had been holding my breath for 2 years and had only just remembered how to let it go. Derek called me that evening. I did not answer. He called again. I did not answer. His attorney sent an email marked urgent at 9:47 p.m. I read it, closed my laptop, and went to sleep. The forensic audit took 4 months. The federal investigation, which had been quietly underway since I mailed my first package of documents to a field office 14 months before that day in court, moved into a more active phase the following week. I was not a central figure in that process. I had simply been, as the agent in the hallway put it, a contributing source. Derek's company was found to have underreported income across 3 consecutive tax years. The 2 LLCs I had documented were traced to transactions that fell well outside civil territory. His business partner cooperated early. Derek did not. I was awarded the marital home, a full accounting of concealed assets, and a legal settlement that took another 8 months to finalize. I also received a letter, several months after the federal matter concluded, informing me that under the IRS whistleblower program, I was entitled to a percentage of the collected proceeds from the case. I read that letter twice. Then I called my mother. "I thought you said you didn't have a lawyer," she said. "I didn't," I told her. She was quiet for a moment. "Then how did you—" "I paid attention," I said. "For a very long time I just paid attention. There is something I want you to understand about the years I spent at home. People. The kind of people who attended the dinners I organized, who shook my hand at events, and then forgot my name by the time they reached the next conversation. They looked at me and saw a wife, an accessory, someone whose value was ambient, decorative, contingent on someone else. Derek looked at me that morning in the kitchen and saw a problem that had already been solved. What none of them saw was the notebook in the nightstand drawer, the hard drive, the copied statements, the quiet, patient, thorough work of someone who had never actually stopped thinking, who had simply stopped being seen while she did it. I am not telling you this story because I want you to feel sorry for me. I am telling you this because I want you to understand something about the people in your life who seem quiet, who seem small, who seem like they are simply there, simply present, simply waiting. Some of them are waiting, but not the way you think. Some of them are waiting, but not the way you think. Some of them are watching. Some of them are writing things down in small black notebooks, in careful handwriting, with dates and amounts and account numbers. Some of them are cross-referencing wire transfers at 11 o'clock at night while you are asleep in the room down the hall, dreaming about a future that no longer includes them. Some of them have already mailed the envelope. Derek found that out on a Tuesday morning in November, in a courtroom where he had arrived expecting to watch me fail. The court did not laugh. The court went very, very quiet. And in that quiet, for the first time in 7 years, I finally heard myself.